Hello, everybody else who's joining us today. This is just a little informal discussion between myself, Grace, and Jess. Jess, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, right. Okay. So yes, me. I can do that. My name's Jess, as mentioned already. I run Prelude School of Music. We offer lessons in music, piano, singing, guitar, flute, saxophone, clarinet, and music theory at last count, I believe.
Well remembered.
Yes, I was like things. And Grace and I went to uni together, and she also worked with us here at Prelude for a while as well, which was a delight.
So there's a little bit of background about Jess. So today is just a little informal discussion. We want to talk a little bit about our experiences of online lessons, what we're finding easy, what we're finding difficult. There may be a little foray into some other questions as they sort of pop into my mind. But we're just going to see what comes out and sort of take it from there. So with that, I'm going to ask you the first question because we've got to get the ball rolling somehow. What is the best thing about online lessons for you, Jess?
Well, Grace, no. Online teaching. Well, online teaching. It's as I'm sure you're aware, it's been a steep learning curve. It certainly has for me, anyway. It was something that I'd been thinking about doing before coronavirus happened, and then coronavirus happened, and I was kind of forced into doing it. So the sort of like, for example, if you travel out, I mean, I don't, but I travel to my studio here, all that kind of stuff, and I don't have to really factor in travel time. For example, you can sort of just pop through. There's very little in terms of physical or location specific organization that needs to be done almost. And that's the same for the students as well. They can just kind of go, I've got a lesson in 5 minutes, pop into the room or whatever like that, and then get on camera. So that makes it really easy. Is there anything else that I can think of? Can you think of anything?
I think the thing for me is that the transition was never going to be an easy one with us being flung into it at a moment's notice. But I really like the way that you become so focused on that one student. You're not worried about, is somebody going to walk through the door? Is the next lesson here? Is there, virtual waiting rooms are a godsend. And because of that, it really allows me to focus sort of like on that student in that moment without having any sort of other interference, apart from the occasional tea break, which sometimes arrives at the studio door courtesy of the husband. So apart from that, I mean, it's been weird. It's definitely been a learning curve, but that ability to kind of just focus in and get some really good work done. So from the best to the worst thing about online lessons.
I don't like not being in a room with my students. Like, I mean, this, virtual is great for the people who need it, but I much personally prefer physically being with my students. I can pay much more attention to their posture, and this is for both piano and singing, their posture, their breathing, on there's no lag. So there's things like that where I get frustrated, especially with singing, because a lot of the time I'm not seeing their whole body. I'm seeing, well, much like we are now, I can see just the top half. I can't see the posture. And if I do go, can you stand really far away? Then I can't see what they're doing with their jaw, that kind of thing. With a piano, I'll tell you one thing that has happened. One of my students, he's great. He's set up his camera so it looks directly down onto his keyboard, which is perfect, apart from the fact it's back to front. So I'm sitting there and I'm teaching, I'm going, is that the right? I think that's the right note. Yeah. And then I'm having to think about a piano back to front, which is interesting. That's a new skill.
I have a separate camera which I use. It's actually affixed to the main computer, and quite often students can't see my hands on a keyboard if I'm teaching piano. So I end up and I pick up the camera, but if you're trying to play two hands, there's only one way to hold that camera. So yeah, so there becomes quite a lot of trying to show a student, then having to take either to speak around the thing that you're trying to hold in your mouth because there's
Yeah.
only so many words. So yeah, it's definitely a different way of working. I think as I'm kind of there's quite a few students that I know online isn't for them, and they're the
Mm.
students that I'm not now seeing every week or seeing every other week or whenever they come for their lessons. And I miss them. I think I miss that human interaction. We know, I
Yeah.
mean, you and I have worked in the same building before, and it's lovely
Yeah.
to have another human
Yeah.
um, to speak to and to interact with. And it's just not quite the same through a camera.
No, I mean that's one thing that was happening here in the building which we're speaking about. Obviously, is that it was starting to pick up. It was getting really. It was doing that word that I love so much. It was starting to bustle. It was bustling. It was beginning to bustle, and that really made me really happy. It was a really nice feeling of people coming and going, and teachers and students alike just coming and going, all getting on with it, everything, and then like this hub where, this music learning was happening, and that's not happening anymore. And like you say, a lot of my students don't enjoy the remote teaching, so a lot of them have decided to wait until we're back, which is a completely fair point, but it's really frustrating. I mean, but then again, a lot of people are in the same boat. It's not like we're special in that regard. It's just probably just voicing the same frustrations that a lot of people have about that lack of human contact and interaction, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those. I can't wait, and I know you're exactly the same. I can't wait until I can open my doors, possibly with more screens up and more Dettol spray than I can, buy in bulk. I feel like I should just have holsters, that it should just be sort of in cans that we can kind of,
I think that's a fantastic idea.
Dettol spray can holsters. That's my next. If music teaching fails, that's my next big thing. You heard it here first. So, I mean, I guess the thing then, if you were saying to students and prospective students who are kind of umming and ahhing about lessons right now, I see leads on a daily basis that are people who are like, they would consider online or they wouldn't consider online. And what is it that you wish your students knew about online teaching?
Such a short answer to this is the very short answer is that it is possible. It's feasible. It's not ideal, but at the moment we're not in an ideal situation. I think that's the thing I really want people to realize is they're like, oh no, this isn't going to work, and I'm like, but it can work. I mean, I've had students who I've got a retired gentleman, and he's very stuck in his ways. He's lovely. He's one of my favourite students, but he's very stuck in his ways. But one thing that has absolutely surprised me and made me really, really glad is that he's really persevered. And even though he always grumbles about Zoom, he hates the internet, he doesn't like the way it works, and he absolutely despises it, but he turns up for his lessons and he's still willing to try even through all of this. And then you've got all that personal stress and things going on as well. So it's so impressive. I don't think it would be any more difficult than if it was face-to-face in terms of the actual learning process, but the situation is not comfortable because you've got that distance. There's such a distance. But yeah, I think the main thing I want people to know is that it is possible. It's doable. It's just not necessarily easy.
Yeah. That's a really succinct way of kind of putting it. It is possible. And yes. I think the nice thing again about now being lockdown 3 is that we've been in, out. It is fully the hokey cokey. And every time we go back into this situation, we as teachers learn something different, I guess. So yes. that's the really nice thing about it. I mean, I was thinking yesterday, obviously, as I baked my 50,000th loaf of banana bread during this pandemic. Obviously, I've seen on social media and such like that you've been doing baking. What has been your favourite bake? Because you've been doing loads of vegan baking, which I find really like weird and intriguing.
Well, the thing is, obviously, I mean, I'm not fully fledged vegan, right? I'm a very naughty vegetarian, shall we say? Sorry, my phone just vibrated. So, but I live with a vegan, but I'm also a feeder. So if I cook something or bake something, it's not for me to eat, it's for everyone to eat. But obviously living with a vegan means that, you know, I should cook vegan. It's interesting. I mean, a lot of one thing I loved learning is about egg replacements. And obviously, at the end of the day, baking and cooking is just chemistry. So you know, as long as you know what the egg is supposed to do within the sphere of whatever you're baking, you replace it with the correct replacer, basically. But the chia egg is my favourite. The chia egg, so you basically take chia seeds, you can either grind them or just leave them whole, and then you just put enough water in, and then obviously you know how they absorb water and it becomes very gelatinous. You get essentially an egg, like the same texture as an egg.
I'm not sure whether my face is giving me away as to how I feel about this.
But yeah, you can't tell a lot of the time. It's really easy. I mean, I haven't done any baking recently. Apart from Christmas, I did gingerbread cookies. And that was interesting because I didn't have half the flour I needed, so I used almond flour. So they were a strange flavour, but they were very nice. But yeah,
nice.
No, anyway.
No, the reason I ask is that, as I say, like there's various different bakes and such, like due to a recommendation from another teacher, thinking about hot chocolate, and having said to you earlier that I bought myself a milk frother.
Yeah.
He recommended an oat milk, but a barista style oat milk, so it froths really nicely.
Yes.
And it's beautiful. I was really dubious. This is going to be like, it's not going to be milk. It's going to taste really weird.
You don't have oat milk?
I mean, I probably have when I've been at hers, but never really recognised it, if that makes sense, because it's so mild.
So lovely. The first time I had oat milk, I went to a friend's house similarly, and I knew that she didn't have dairy milk because her daughter's a vegan. So I obviously, I don't know whether you did this, but I used to cut dairy out in the run up to recitals. So I would be having soy milk a lot of the time, and I don't really like soy milk because I just don't really like the texture of it. I don't like the flavour.
Yeah.
So I was drinking this coffee and it was really smooth and silky and creamy, and I was like, what milk is this? And she was like, it's oat milk. So I've actually been using oat milk quite regularly, actually, for a few years now. It's lovely. I love oat milk. Yeah. But apparently Oatly aren't the best in terms of like principles and ethics. So apparently a better company is Minor Figures. But yeah.
Cool. All right. Sounds nice. So now that we've done a lovely little divergence away from online learning, tell me a little bit. This is where we get to the sort of like shameless plug section of today. I mean, when I think about the way that I deliver online lessons in comparison, actually, in terms of how I would deal with a student in a session, I don't think much is different in terms of my singers, but in terms of the way that I've then adapted for my piano players, especially the very small, cute students that I teach, there's been a lot of change. So I do a lot more sort of games. I use a lot more other resources. So I guess realistically, my question is, how are you delivering your online lessons in terms of, is there a set structure that you're always adhering to? And are there any other, I guess, resources or things that you've implemented to kind of keep students engaged or make it more sort of interactive?
Similarly to you, I don't think the overall structure has changed, in the sense that certainly with singers, I mean, I think one thing that has changed a little bit more, which could potentially work in their favour actually, because, you know, I'm sure you get it a lot with students where, you know, you'll sing their warm-ups with them, for example, but online there's too much lag for that to happen, really. So what I've started doing, especially with some of the more advanced students, is it's just kind of doing the exercise and then repeating after me, which also means that I can really pay attention to what they're doing, which kind of leads back into what we were saying before, is the sense that you can really focus on what you're doing with the student. Another thing that has come in really, really handy is, I mean, I do use a whiteboard, Sometimes when I'm teaching here, I've only got the one between like 3 rooms, so I need to stock up on those. But yeah, I do use whiteboard sometimes, and I use a virtual whiteboard, which is helpful because I do actually have a pen, so I'm not using a mouse. Screen sharing as well is like super helpful. Really, really helpful screen sharing. I found screen sharing to be an absolute delight, especially with the sound as well, because it's basically like a projector almost, but you're just kind of doing that straight onto their screen. I think so the whiteboards, the screen sharing, there was something else I was going to do. I think I've ended up using a lot more online resources. There was some that I used to suggest, like apps and things like that, but they were very much sort of like, oh, do them in your own time, because I haven't really got the time to sit there on my phone or whatever and bring it up and everything like that. But when we're in, on a call together and they can see it clearly, it's not like a tiny screen, it doesn't feel like I'm going off to find it. Definitely found like, just kind of popped on and gone, oh, here's a good resource, and then gone there and just sent it over, and then they've got it then, rather than like having to write it down or put it in their phone or whatever like that. So I think that's come in quite handy. Unfortunately, a lot of my little ones haven't stayed on during lockdown because I think they find that distance a little bit too difficult. They need the contact, so I haven't really got any of my little ones. So I'd be very interested to know what sort of games you've been using with them.
Currently my desk is littered, and I mean littered, it is a bomb site, which won't surprise anybody that's known me very long, with various different things that I'm using. My family have a wonderful tradition of buying me various different musical games or instruments at birthdays and Christmas, one of which was actually a stack of cards. It's called Measure Up is the game. But when you look at them, they're all different rhythms or rests or time signatures. I don't know if you can see that. It's not very clear. And the aim of the game realistically is to learn how to play time signatures. So the time signature goes down, you have to select the notes that add up to the time signature. I've used this in face-to-face sessions where myself and the student have sat on the floor, and I've given them a whole array of stuff, and I've used coloured pens as bar lines and things like that, which works great face-to-face because you've got the tactile movement, everything's very kinesthetic. But again, it becomes a really useful prompt. For the longest time, I was trying to write on the whiteboard and trying to draw all my symbols every single time, whereas now I can go, what's that?
Because I mean, I've used just regular flashcards before. Because I find the kids do tend to like flashcards. And also, give me 1 second, I'm going to grab something. A friend of mine for Christmas bought me these. I don't know if you can see them.
Musical dominoes. I'm sure I've got some hiding in a cupboard.
And it's basically very similar. You kind of like, you're playing dominoes, but you have to like match the rhythm. So for anyone who's paying attention, so you could match that one there with that end there, for example, because the rhythm is the same, that kind of thing. So I did have one game with one of my kids, and I let him win. So he was quite he was like, I won, and I was like, yes, you did, well done. To be fair, he did one bit where he managed to, I mean, we probably weren't playing it properly, but he managed to like do 3 matches, and I was like, how did you do that, kind of thing. I think he might have guessed, but I was still impressed anyway. So, I gave him credit where it's due, really. I wouldn't have thought always a box like that. But I do. But again, dominoes as well. I feel like they're really nice and heavy as well. So you do kind of lose some of that in the online stuff, but games and stuff like that. So there's I don't know whether you're aware of it. For theory and things like that, there's a website that I use, and there is an iPhone app as well. But it's musictheory.net. Have you been onto it? I think it's a brilliant resource. I think it's great that like the online flashcards and the exercises that they can do. I think it's great, and you can set the parameters as well. So
it's a brilliant way of with one of my brand new students who's learning piano. We were doing note recognition, And the fact that it's automated, so it's not me going, what about this one? Is quite nice because and you can put all the help stuff on and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It was really good.
absolutely.
I think the best thing for me, realistically, especially during lockdown, especially with moving to online with my younger students, the best resource is the parents. And I know it's corny and I know it's cheesy, but the students, especially the younger ones, so I take students from sort of 5 and upwards.
Yeah.
Students that sit or have the support of their parents, they make so much progress within week to week, or whether it's 2 weeks, they're rolling lessons, because the parental support is there. And a big shout out. I can't imagine what having children and in a pandemic and being at home and trying to support learning and work a job or anything like that. Massive shout out to all the parents, because I think I would have gone crazy by now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really good shout, actually. Yeah, definitely sort of having supportive parents. I mean, even out of a pandemic as well, I think, having parents who support the kids' learning is always helpful anyway.
So I think as we sort of like round out, are you hoping to stay online? Are you hoping to do a mixture of the two? What is the grand plan, if there is one?
Well, the grand plan was 2 weeks before the first lockdown, so nearly a year ago now, 10 months, whatever you want to call it. I expanded the business. I got a new room. It's a wonderful big room. I am actually doing a little tour of the studio after we finished, so that's why I'm here. One of the reasons I'm here and not at home is because I'm going to go, here's where I teach, when we're not in a pandemic. But yeah, I got this massive new room. The acoustics are, by the way, to do group lessons. It's like the biggest universal joke ever. Like, to do group lessons specifically. And then obviously lockdowns happened and group lessons have been a thing of the past for a year now. I mean, obviously, but one thing that has really made me think about that is I could still do those with that room, but also online group lessons. I think like I say, that sort of learning curve of having to do things online has really made me aware that it's not only possible for students to learn, but it's possible for me to teach. I was always thinking about it. I mean, in terms of this business, I mean, I've been teaching for like a very long time without giving my age away. No, I've been teaching for a while. But in terms of this business, in terms of Prelude, we've been here for 5 years this year.
Yeah.
And I've always thought about going online because of the convenience for some people. But I myself was a little bit hesitant to do it because I was like, how do I deliver content online? I don't know whether I can teach online. Some of the teachers here, Helen, for example, she was like, yeah, online's fine. I've been doing online for ages. And I was just like, okay, then, kind of thing. But sort of having to force myself to do online has made me realise that there are, it's very possible. It's possible on both ends of the spectrum for both students to learn and for teachers to teach it. Also, one thing that's happened is that there's a plethora of apps and conference call apps that you can use now, so you've got that option as well. So I think one thing I definitely want to do is I probably will continue with some online lessons. I personally would prefer for those to be the minority. For me, I do definitely prefer the face-to-face teaching, purely because of that contact. But one thing I definitely want to do is start to deliver group online content, which I think would be quite useful. That's definitely part of the plan, and that would be sort of soonish, I hope. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
It's one of those. I think, yeah, and I was so jealous when I saw you kind of, parading around that space in a different video, and I was like, I want space like that. However, what I'm currently sat in was our lockdown project. Lockdown 1 project was this space.
Yeah.
And there's no more space unless I start building. There's no more space here to make that happen. I don't think that the other half would be very pleased about that. So yeah, well,
might not.
So my final question is a sort of give me your 3. What were they? Oh, my brain's died. I'm going to try that again.
It's okay.
So the last question is about 3 quickfire things. Okay, so the quickfire is, which 3 things in lockdown have you learnt?
Oh no, I hate quickfire questions. Okay, I've learned that it is possible. I know I keep saying it, but it's possible. It's doable. Not necessarily related to teaching, but I've learned that I've got a lot of us, but I've learned that I've got a fortitude of character that I didn't sort of like a well of strength that I didn't know I had, really. I mean, you know, I had other stuff going on as well, but with that as well, I was just like, I didn't even realize that was there. And the third one, it sounds so cheesy, but is that I actually genuinely do really love my job the way it is, which is like seeing people and that interaction and the moment where you have that contact and that eureka moment with students and that kind of passing on of knowledge, but face to face. I mean, I like, it's okay, it's good, and I'm glad that I still see my students. I'm glad, so glad. And I, again, huge shout out to my students who stayed with me, and I'm sure it's the same for you as well. That is also, that's not to criticize anyone who hasn't, because this is not an ideal situation. But for those of you stuck with me, thank you so much, because you kept my sanity. But yeah, I think knowing that I definitely, even though this has been really hard and I've not wanted to stop doing it, I think has been quite a revelation.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's been nice to have you here. It's been nice to see you and have some conversation.
Yes. Yeah.